Shwmae! If you know anything about Welsh, you probably know that Welsh has this thing called mutations. You probably have a general idea that you should dread them and that they make no sense. But what are mutations anyway? It's the name for the changes that happen in the beginning of words sometimes. But is that enough explanation? Are you satisfied? If you're anything like me, you probably want to know what they are really. Or ultimately, why? Why do the words change? What's the point? Well, I was curious and I decided to find out, and today you will finally know. Felly, beth yw'r treigladau? Croeso I hir-iaith. The idea that words can change in some contexts shouldn't be that hard to grasp. This is common in many European languages. For example, I walk, she walks. When this happens with verbs like this is called conjugation. But it can happen with different words for different reasons. Latin had a very complex system of changing words to show grammatical information, as we can see in the expression anno domini. The word annus changes to anno to mean in the ear, and the word dominus changes to domini to mean of the Lord. These changes used to be common in most European languages, but a language like English has retained some of them only in some context, such as he is here and I like him. However, these sort of changes are not mutations because most of them are grammatical. The changes convey the role that the word plays in the sentence. Welsh mutation, on the other hand, works according to proximity and sound, not grammar. But this is also common in other languages. For example, notice the difference between a school and an apple. Here we have a sound change which does not change the grammar, but is related to the sound context. This change is very easy to see because it's reflected in the spelling, but all languages have these little rules about how certain sounds should be pronounced depending on the context. And most native speakers don't even notice them. For example, the word the is also pronounced differently in those two contexts. We say the school and the apple. The sound p is also pronounced differently, for example, in the words spin and pin, with pin being more forceful than spin. Again, these are rules that native speakers follow without even noticing. Consonant mutation in Welsh originated centuries ago just like this, as little sound changes in different contexts that just made sense to pronounce. Looking at what the words looked like all that time ago can give us a hint about how mutation originated. In modern Welsh, there are 3 different types of mutation, each of them descending from a different process that used to happen to sounds in different contexts. Nowadays, they are called soft mutation, aspirate mutation, and nasal mutation. These names are not 100% technically correct when you actually look into the details about what is happening with mutations, but we're going to stick with these names for now. Treiglad meddal. Soft mutation. Soft mutation is the most common mutation in Welsh, and the name is actually correct. It refers to a weakening of the articulation of the consonant. The reason for this is quite simple. Historically, a consonant was weakened when it was squeezed between 2 vowels. This makes sense because it's easier to pronounce vowels than consonants. So a consonant squeezed between 2 vowels in that way would also be pronounced in this more relaxed way. The technical name for this is lenition, from Latin lenis, which means weak. Lenition happens in English in some contexts. In American English, for example, the sound t of the letter T can be said to undergo soft mutation in some contexts. For example, in the word later. However, for some reason, this can only happen in unstressed syllables. That's why in American English we say potato, but we don't say potato. So being squeezed between these 2 vowels explains why the t becomes a r in American English, and also explains most of the reasons why soft mutation originated in Welsh all those centuries ago. But when we look at modern Welsh, it doesn't look like soft mutation is following the same logic of being squeezed between vowels. For example, let's take the word teg and let's put it after the word tafarn, and we say tafarndeg. There's no vowel before the consonant that changed from t to d. And even in some contexts in modern Welsh where it looks like there is a vowel triggering a soft mutation, it doesn't really make sense when you compare to other contexts. Mam, a vam, but mab, a mab, dim treiglo. Cath, a gath, but cath, a chath. But the reason why these mutations are so mysterious now is because the words changed considerably from from what they used to look like and be pronounced all those centuries ago, when mutations first appeared. The words themselves changed, but the triggers remained as some kind of ghostly presence there. So let's turn back the centuries and see what the words looked like. For example, the word his, all those years ago, used to be esio, ending in a vowel. That means that if the next word had a consonant and then after that a vowel, that consonant would be squeezed between these two vowels and would undergo soft mutation. So for example, esio catus, esio gatus. The reason why the word a doesn't trigger soft mutation when it means her is because it used to be a different word. It used to be esias, not ending in a vowel. Of course, I'm guessing all these pronunciations. What about the other examples that we looked at before? At some point, almost all feminine nouns ended in a. So this vowel a created the environment to trigger soft mutation in the next word. So a fair tavern would be tabarna teca, and the T would be squeezed between two vowels to become tabarna deca. But you might notice that there are still many differences between these words and the modern Welsh words. That's because any consonant between two vowels would also undergo soft mutation. So the B between two vowels in tabarna would also undergo soft mutation to become tavarna. And the same thing happened with the K, the K sounding teca, which would become tega. And then, after some time, the endings of many words stopped being pronounced. So we lost the final vowel in the word tavarna, now pronounced tavarn, but not the trigger for soft mutation, which was considered to remain there in some way as a trigger. These early Welsh speakers applied these logic and these rules both to native Welsh words, but also to the Latin words that they were borrowing at the time. So the words for sun would gradually go from mappos to mabos and then mab. But a Latin word such as fides, meaning faith, hence English fidelity, would at some point change and mutate into fides, and then later would lose the ending to be pronounced fid. Older forms of words also explain why feminine nouns mutate after the, but masculine nouns don't. Feminine singular the used to be quite a long word, synda, ending in a vowel, therefore triggering soft mutation. But masculine the was syndos, thus not ending in a vowel, not triggering soft mutation. What originally was a change triggered by the sound came to be felt as a grammatical rule that just felt natural to follow. Just like English speakers add an S after walk if it's preceded by she, so Welsh speakers also mutate feminine nouns after a. Triglatrinal, aspirate mutation. Aspirate mutation is also a case of lenition, of making pronunciation easier and softer. That's because it's easier to pronounce a fricative consonant, such as f, than a plosive consonant, also called a stop, such as p. The original triggers for aspirate mutation used to be the sounds k and the sounds s, so the letters k and s at the end of words. So the word her, being esias and ending in s, would trigger an aspirate mutation. For example, the word tegos would be thegos. Other aspirate mutation triggers that we have today, such as the word a and the number hue, also would end with these sounds, ac, swex. Not all words that ended in s would trigger an aspirate mutation though. As we saw, syndos, meaning masculine the, ended in s and did not trigger aspirate mutation. This is probably related to the order that these mutations originated in the language and at what point we lost the endings of words. Finally, Triglatrinal, nasal mutation. Nasal mutation is slightly different from the other ones because it's not a case of lenition, but it's a case of assimilation. Very simply, the triggers for nasal mutation are nasal sounds themselves, and they make the next sound become nasal as well. So that's why we say that the next sound becomes assimilated into the previous sound. The triggers for nasal mutation were almost always the sound n, the letter n. For example, my used to be men. So my house would be men plus tegos, menhegos. Nowadays, my is pronounced v, but in colloquial Welsh, many people pronounce this word n, so still ending in a nasal sound. So here's a short history of why these mutations originated. Soft mutation originated from being squeezed between vowels, aspirate mutation was triggered by S and K, and nasal mutation was triggered by nasal sounds. They originated from normal sound changes that many languages have, where words and sounds may change depending on the context. Hopefully that makes it easier for you to grasp the idea of mutations and why they exist and where they come from. But please stay tuned for other videos about how to actually memorize the rules and how to make sense of them in a way which is not entirely arbitrary. A chofiwch bydd yr hir-iaith yn hir-iaith. Hwyl!